I was conditioning myself to like video games and to want to spend so much time playing those video games because I was sort of avoiding my own problems. Now let's talk about gaming. Gaming has become something of a bit of a problem for a lot of men because it becomes something that's very, very addictive and usually sort of a distraction from life, not in a healthy way, that where you're just sort of, maybe like watching TV or reading a book or something that's kind of distracting in a sort of stress release kind of way. But it's become more than that, so it's sort of become sort of a way of avoiding things that we need to do. And I know that this was the case for me for a very long time. In fact, it was for as long as I can remember. Even as a little kid, I remember it was the first time I ever played video games was when I was 4 or 5 years old. I was hanging out with my kindergarten buddy at the time, and we had just gotten back from Disney World. And I spent some days with him at his house. I don't even remember why. Maybe my parents were out of town. I don't remember exactly the details, but I remember that the only thing that we did during that period of time, or during those days, was play video games, eat, play video games, eat, play video games, and go to sleep. So this was basically the entire stay. It was me playing video games with my buddy. We were playing the Super Nintendo, it was popular back then. And guys, I spent so much time playing video games and I didn't get sick of it. I was just hooked from that point forward in my life. And in fact, it was just until recently, about maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. Excuse me, it was about 2 years ago when I actually stopped playing video games. Now, why did I stop playing video games? I stopped because I realized that this was a very unhealthy relationship that I had with video games. And look, if you're the kind of person that can play for just 15 minutes and then turn it off and be completely okay and function in society, I'm not talking to you. So this is something that's probably affecting a lot of guys, but we don't really talk about it that much, or we don't really talk about it enough, because a lot of people, myself included, would actually defend this bad behavior. Because I realized that I had a very unhealthy relationship with video games, because I would sometimes even skip work just to play video games. I would avoid any kind of decision making, avoid any kind of responsibility, avoid any kind of actual work or things that would actually benefit me and that I wanted to do, but I would sort of put video games in front of it, right? And so even if I just wanted to relieve some stress and say, okay, I'm just gonna play for like 20 minutes, that 20 minutes then turned into 30 minutes and 40 minutes into an hour, into 2 hours, 3 hours. And before I knew it, it was time for dinner, or it was time for me to go to sleep or something like that. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to feel like I had no time to do things that I actually wanted to do. I didn't want to feel like I was trapped by anything. And I always hated the feeling of depending on something, on having an addiction to something, right? And so I avoided any kind of thing that would lead me to that. I've never done any kind of drugs. I've never been an alcoholic. I've never had any types of problems like that. The only addiction I ever had was to video games. And so I wanted to get rid of that because I don't really like the feeling. And maybe you're different than me, and that's perfectly fine. But I don't really like the feeling of depending on something to exist. And I thought that I would miss it. I thought that it would be very, very hard for me to leave it. But the truth of the matter is, I don't miss it at all. I don't really yearn for it. I don't have any kind of cravings for it. I don't care if there's like a new video game released this week. I don't care. None of those things matter to me anymore. And what I realized is I was sort of conditioning myself. I was conditioning myself to like video games and to want to spend so much time playing those video games because I was sort of avoiding my own problems. I was avoiding the things that I needed to do in order to progress in my life. I was avoiding a lot of the work that I needed to do. I was avoiding a lot of the painful decisions that I needed to take. I was avoiding a lot of the hard work and the struggle that I needed to face inside of myself in order to get better in life, to have a better relationship with myself, have a better relationship with others. And so I decided that I was gonna just quit cold turkey. Now, for me, that worked perfectly fine, but maybe for other people, that's not the case. So what I wanna present to you right now is sort of an alternative. Basically give you the idea that you don't necessarily have to give up video games forever, completely. You can maybe play in the weekends, or you can play for like an hour every couple of days, whatever it is. But you need to understand that this is an addiction, and there are any kind of addictions that we all have with different kinds of behaviors, foods, or things like that. You don't necessarily have to be addicted to drugs or something like nasty like that. You need to really understand that there can be an addiction with any kind of thing, any kind of behavior, even emotions. There are a lot of people who are addicted to being angry, addicted to being sad and depressed, people who are addicted to feeling frustrated and feeling like they're always tense and stressed and anxious. So we need to be very, very aware of those addictions and how we interact in the world with those addictions. So the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to actually be aware of them and let them go, because it doesn't really serve us. It's kind of hindering us. So the best thing that we can do in terms of video games, in terms of a bad relationship with video games, is for us to kind of either weed it out or eliminate it completely, like I did, because it allows you then to have so much more time and so much more creative space and so much more, enjoyment out of life. Because I realized that there's this thing called dopamine. You probably heard of it in the internet, right? There's this thing called dopamine, and whenever you play video games, there's this huge spike in dopamine. But when you do it over and over and over and over and over again, that spike of dopamine gets smaller and smaller and smaller every time. So you need to spend more time playing video games in order to get the same fix of dopamine. So this is exactly how any kind of addiction works, right? So that also means that your baseline of dopamine, which we all need, of kind of like a baseline of dopamine in order to feel motivated to do anything, right? So that baseline goes down and you feel less motivated to do any kind of thing. Like, I remember that I used to play video games for a long, long time, and after I played video games, I didn't really want to do anything. I just wanted to sit on the couch and either watch Netflix or eat, or doing something like that was absolutely zero effort required, right? And so eliminating that need for video games then allowed me to come back to baseline in terms of dopamine and feel more motivated to do other things as well and have more enjoyment out of life that way. So if you're having a very unhealthy relationship with video games, how do you know you have an unhealthy relationship? Well, if you're putting things off to play video games, if maybe other people that you love, like friends, family, your girlfriend, or whatever it is, have told you that you spend way too much time playing video games because they don't see you anymore. Or maybe you are behind on your work, behind on payments, behind on any kind of thing, or you're not really doing the things that you want. Maybe you want to work out, but you don't find the time to do it because you're playing so many video games. If you find yourself in any of those situations and any of this is starting to resonate with you, then you need to cut back on those video games. You need to stop playing video games, because it's going to then give you so much more in return. It's going to give you more time, it's going to give you more enjoyment, it's going to give you that baseline of dopamine like we talked about. And now personally, you may find this useful or not, maybe you find some other kind of way useful, but the way I see it is, if I have any kind of temptation around me, I'm going to cave into that temptation. So if I have a video game console, or if I have like a whole bunch of games installed in my computer or my phone or whatever it is, then I need to eliminate those completely. So if I have a console, I'm gonna stow it away, I'm gonna unplug it, I'm gonna put it in a cupboard, and I'm not gonna see it weeks or months from now, right? That's exactly what I did. I didn't have any kind of games installed in my phone, I don't have any games installed in my computer, and so I eliminated from my site completely. And so eliminating that eliminated the temptation for me to play. And I didn't miss it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't have any kind of, craving or yearning for playing video games because it was no longer in my environment, right? Now, you might find this really, really stressful, and so you may want to kind of weed it out slowly, but I'm just telling you what works for me, okay? For me, it was really, really stressful to have it around. So I eliminated from my environment. Now, let me know if you found this helpful. If you agree, if you disagree, leave it in the comments. And just don't be a dick about it. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, maybe you'll like this one too. Check it out.